I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was standing in the hallway outside my son's bedroom door, holding a tray with 2 cups of chamomile tea and a small plate of almond cookies I'd baked that morning. And through the crack in the door, I heard his fiancée say, "Don't tell him about the land. He doesn't know what it's worth. If we play this right, Marcus will be set for life." I stood there. The tray didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I just listened, and what I heard next made my blood run cold. But before I tell you what she said and what I did, you need to understand how I ended up standing in that hallway, serving tea in my own house to people who were planning to steal from me. You're probably wondering how it got this far. So let me take you back. My name is Harold Burgess. I'm 71 years old. I live in a small town in central Virginia, about 40 minutes from Charlottesville, on a piece of land that's been in my family since 1931. My grandfather bought it during the Depression, 47 acres, rolling hills, a creek that runs clean year-round, and a farmhouse that he built with his own hand from lumber he milled himself. My father raised cattle on that land. I grew tobacco on it for 20 years before I switched to hay and leased most of it out. The house isn't fancy. It's got a tin roof, a wraparound porch, and a kitchen that still has the cast-iron wood stove my grandmother cooked on. But that land is everything. My wife, Dolores, passed away 8 years ago. Breast cancer. She fought it for 3 years, and I was beside her every single day. When she died, the world got very quiet. We had one child, Marcus. I loved that boy more than I loved breathing. When he was small, he used to ride on my shoulders through the fields, and I'd tell him, "One day, son, all of this will be yours." He'd laugh and grab fistfuls of my hair. I thought that love would last forever, but I didn't know what was coming. Marcus left for college at 18, Virginia Tech. I was proud. First Burgess to get a degree. He studied business, got a job in Richmond, came home less and less. I understood. Young men have lives to build. I didn't push. But then he met Vanessa. She was sharp, confident, wore expensive clothes, and drove a white SUV that looked like it had never seen a dirt road. She smiled at me the first time we met and said, "What a charming little property." Little, 47 acres. And she called it little. I let it go. You do that when you love your son. You let things go. They got engaged fast. 4 months of dating. Marcus called me on the phone and said, "Dad, she's the one." I said, "Then bring her home. Let me get to know her." That was my first mistake. They moved in with me 6 months ago. Marcus said it was temporary, just until we save enough for a down payment. Dad, 6 months, maybe 8. I said, "Stay as long as you need. This is your home." Vanessa brought 14 suitcases. I counted. She brought an espresso machine, a ring light for making videos on her phone, and a little white dog named Coco that barked at me every single morning like I was a stranger in my own house. Within 2 weeks, things started to change. Small things at first. Vanessa rearranged the living room, moved Dolores's rocking chair to the garage, said it didn't match the aesthetic. I went to the garage that night, sat in that chair in the dark, and ran my fingers along the armrest where Dolores had worn it with smooth over 30 years. I brought it back inside the next morning. Vanessa didn't say anything, but she looked at Marcus, and Marcus looked at the floor. That should have told me everything. But I wasn't paying attention to the right things yet. A month in, Vanessa started making comments. "Harold, do you really need to keep all these old tools in the barn? We could turn that space into something useful. Harold, the kitchen smells like grease. Can we maybe cook differently? Harold, I notice you leave the porch light on all night. That's wasting electricity." I'd lived in that house for 71 years. She'd been there 30 days. But I stayed quiet. For Marcus. Then one evening, I overheard her talking to Marcus in the kitchen. "Your dad doesn't do anything all day," she said. "He just sits on that porch. Meanwhile, we're paying for groceries." They weren't paying for groceries. I paid for everything. Electric, water, insurance, property taxes, food. Marcus said nothing to correct her. That silence, his silence, hurt more than anything she said. But the real pain hadn't even started. About 3 months in, I noticed Vanessa had started getting mail at the house. Thick envelopes. Official looking. One day, I saw a letter on the counter from the county assessor's office. It was addressed to Marcus, but the request had been filed under Vanessa's email address. I didn't open it. It wasn't my mail. But something in my gut turned over. A week later, I saw Vanessa on her laptop at the kitchen table, zooming in on what looked like a satellite map. When I walked in, she closed the screen fast and smiled. "Just looking at recipes," she said. I nodded. But I'm 71 years old, not stupid. I know what a property survey looks like. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I'd spent the day at the VA clinic getting my knee checked, and I was tired. I made tea chamomile, 2 cups, because Marcus liked it, and I put some cookies on a plate and walked down the hall to bring it to them. Their door was open just a crack, and I heard Vanessa's voice, clear, excited, almost giddy. The appraiser said the land could go for $3.2 million if it's rezoned. 3.2, Marcus. There's a developer from Northern Virginia who's been buying up parcels along the new highway corridor. Your dad's land is right in the path. Marcus said he'd never sell, and Vanessa laughed. He doesn't have to sell. We just need to get the title transferred. Your mom's gone. There's no will on file at the courthouse. I checked. If you can get him to sign a quitclaim deed, we tell him it's for estate planning. He won't know the difference. Silence. Then Marcus said, and I'll never forget this. He said, he trusts me. And Vanessa said, exactly. I stood in that hallway for a long time. The tea went cold. The cookies sat untouched. My son, the boy I raised alone after Dolores died, the boy I taught to fish, the boy I drove 4 hours to take to his first college orientation, was sitting in my house, in a bedroom I painted for him when he was 7 years old, planning to steal my land. $3.2 million. That's what my family's legacy was worth to them. Not the creek where my grandfather baptized his children. Not the oak tree where I carved Dolores's initials the day she said yes. Not the field where my father is buried. $3.2 million. I walked back to the kitchen. I set the tray down. I sat at the table in the dark. And I made a decision. But I didn't act right away, because I needed to be sure. And what I found out next was even worse than what I'd heard. The next morning, I drove into town. I went to the county courthouse. I know the clerk there, Betty Marsden. Her mother and Dolores were in the same quilting circle for 20 years. Betty, I said, has anyone been requesting records on my property lately? She looked uncomfortable. Harold, a woman, came in about 6 weeks ago. Said she was family. She pulled your deed, the tax records, and the plat map. She also asked about the process for filing a quitclaim deed. 6 weeks. They'd been planning this for 6 weeks. Did she file anything? I asked. Betty shook her head. Not yet, but she asked a lot of questions. I thanked her and left. Then I drove to the one person I trusted more than anyone still alive. Walter Beecham, 83 years old, retired attorney. He'd handled my father's estate, my property taxes, and Dolores's funeral trust. I sat in his living room and told him everything. Walter didn't interrupt. He just listened, sipping his coffee, his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. When I finished, he set his cup down and said, Harold, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. My stomach dropped. Your property is currently protected, he said. The deed is in your name, free and clear, and it's recorded at the courthouse. But a quitclaim deed doesn't require the other party's knowledge to be prepared. If Marcus presents you with one and you sign it, even if you don't fully understand what it is, the transfer could be legally binding. I felt sick, but here's the part they don't know, Walter said. He leaned forward. You do have a will, Harold. Dolores, and I drafted it together 12 years ago. It's filed in my office, not at the courthouse. And it specifies that the land goes into a conservation trust upon your death. It cannot be sold for development. Period. I stared at him. Dolores wanted that, he said. She told me, if anything ever happens where someone tries to sell that land, I want it protected. She was worried, Harold. She didn't say about who, but she was worried. Dolores, even from beyond the grave, She was protecting us. But Walter wasn't finished. There's something else, he said. That highway corridor Vanessa's talking about? I've been following it. The developer buying parcels is a company called Meridian Ventures. They've already been flagged by the state attorney general's office for predatory land acquisition practices. If Vanessa's been communicating with them about your property without your knowledge, that could constitute fraud. He paused. Harold, do you want to fight this? I looked at him. I want to protect what's mine, I said. And I want my son to understand exactly what he almost did. Walter nodded slowly. Then here's what we're going to do. I went home that afternoon and acted like nothing had happened. I cooked dinner, pork chops, green beans, cornbread. Vanessa picked at her food and talked about a wedding venue she'd found that cost $12,000. We'll need a deposit soon, she said, looking at me. That's a lot of money, I said. Well, she said, smiling, family helps family, right? I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I said, of course. Marcus looked at me with something in his eyes. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or gratitude. Maybe there's no difference anymore. Over the next 2 weeks, I did exactly what Walter told me. I installed a small security camera in the kitchen, pointed at the table where Vanessa did all her laptop work. Legal in Virginia, as long as it's your own property. I recorded 3 separate conversations. In one, Vanessa told Marcus she'd already spoken to Meridian Ventures' representative, a man named Cliff Barlow, and that he was very interested in the parcel. In another, she practiced what she was going to say to me. She actually rehearsed it, sitting at my kitchen table. Harold, Marcus and I have been thinking about your future. What if we set up the property so that it's easier to manage? There's a simple document, a quitclaim deed, that transfers ownership to Marcus. That way, if anything happens to you, there's no messy probate. She even practiced softening her voice. She sounded almost kind. In the third recording, and this is the one that broke my heart, Marcus sat beside her and said, "What if he says no?" And Vanessa replied, "Then we tell him he's not mentally competent to manage the property alone. I've already looked into conservatorship filings." Conservatorship. My son's fiancée was preparing to have me declared mentally unfit. To steal land that my grandfather bought with dirt-stained hands during the worst economic collapse in American history. I saved every recording to a USB drive. Walter made copies. And then I waited. It happened on a Sunday. They sat me down in the living room. The same living room where I'd held Marcus as a baby while Dolores sang hymns. And Vanessa pulled out a manila folder. "Harold," she said, "we've been thinking about your future." Word for word. Exactly what she'd rehearsed. She slid the paper across the coffee table. I looked down at it. A quitclaim deed. My name. Marcus's name. Transferring 47 acres for the sum of $1. I looked up at Marcus. "Son," I said, "do you know what this is?" He didn't look at me. "It's just a formality, Dad, for estate planning." "Estate planning," I repeated. Vanessa jumped in. "It's perfectly standard. It just makes things easier down the road." I picked up the paper. I held it for a long time. Then I said, "I think I'd like my lawyer to look at this." Vanessa's smile froze. "That's really not necessary." "Walter Beecham," I said. "I believe you know the name." She went pale. "In fact," I said, standing up slowly, "Walter's outside right now. I asked him to come by." The front door opened. Walter walked in wearing his Sunday suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Behind him was a woman I hadn't met before, a younger attorney named Dana Price from the state attorney general's office. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "What is this?" she said. Walter set his briefcase on the table and opened it. "Miss Vanessa Cole," he said calmly. "I'm Walter Beecham, attorney for Mr. Harold Burgess. And this is Ms. Dana Price from Virginia AG's Consumer Protection Division." He pulled out a folder. "We have documented evidence that you've been in contact with Meridian Ventures regarding the sale of Mr. Burgess's property without his knowledge or consent. We have recordings, legally obtained, of you planning to deceive Mr. Burgess into signing a fraudulent quitclaim deed. And we have evidence that you researched filing a conservatorship petition against Mr. Burgess to gain control of his assets. The room was silent. Marcus's face was white. "The property," Walter continued, "is protected under a conservation trust established by the late Dolores Burgess. It cannot be sold for commercial development, ever. Even if this deed had been signed, the transfer would have been challenged and overturned." He paused. "Furthermore, Meridian Ventures is currently under investigation by this office." Dana Price said, stepping forward, "Any cooperation you've had with them may expose you to charges of conspiracy to commit fraud." Vanessa's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Marcus turned to me. "Dad." "Don't," I said. The word came out quiet, but it filled the room. "Don't call me Dad right now." Here's what happened after that. Vanessa left the house that evening. She packed her 14 suitcases and loaded them into her white SUV. Coco barked at me one last time. I didn't say goodbye. Dana Price's office opened a formal inquiry into Vanessa's communications with Meridian Ventures. I don't know the full outcome yet, but Walter told me she could face civil penalties. Marcus didn't leave right away. He sat on the porch steps for a long time. I could see him from the kitchen window. Eventually, I went out and sat beside him. We didn't talk for 10 minutes. Then he said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I know. I got lost, Dad." "I know that too." He was crying, quietly, the way men cry when they're ashamed. I put my hand on his shoulder. "Your mother protected this land," I said. "Before she died, she made sure nobody could ever take it. Not a developer, not a stranger, not even you." He broke down. "She knew," he whispered. "She didn't know about Vanessa," I said. "She just knew that land means something that money can't replace." Marcus moved back to Richmond the following week. We talk on the phone now, once a week, sometimes more. It's not the same. I won't pretend it is. Trust is like that old oak tree by the creek. It takes decades to grow and one storm to split down the middle. You can wire it back together and it might survive, but you'll always see the scar. I still sit on my porch every evening. I watch the sun go down over the same hills my grandfather watched. I drink my chamomile tea from the same cup Dolores gave me on our 30th anniversary. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear her voice. "Protect it, Harold. Protect what matters." A few weeks ago, a man drove up my gravel road in a black truck, suit and tie, clipboard. He got out and looked around at the fields, the barn, the creek. "Mr. Burgess," he said, "my name is Cliff Barlow. I'm with Meridian Ventures. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance." "Get off my land," I said. He smiled. "Sir, I think if you just hear what we're—" I said, "Get off my land." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. He looked at me, really looked, and something in my face must have told him everything he needed to know. He got back in his truck and drove away. He hasn't come back. I'm 71 years old. I've buried my wife. I've been betrayed by my son. I've had people sit at my own kitchen table and plot to take everything my family built, and I'm still here, still sitting on this porch, still watching the fireflies come out over the south field, still listening to the creek. People ask me sometimes, "Harold, how do you forgive something like that?" And I tell them the truth. I haven't forgiven it. Not fully. Maybe not ever. But I've let it go. There's a difference. Forgiveness means saying what happened was okay. Letting go means saying it's not going to own me. I choose to be owned by this land, by the memory of my wife, by the sound of my grandfather's voice telling stories about the Depression, by the smell of Virginia clay after a summer rain, not by bitterness, not by revenge. My son is finding his way back. It's slow, it's painful, but he's trying, and that matters. Because here's what I've learned in 71 years. Family isn't blood. Family is an obligation. Family is who shows up when the world goes dark and stays. Dolores stayed even after she was gone. And this land stays. It was here before all of us. It'll be here after. I want to say one more thing, and then I'm done. If you're out there, if you're someone like me, someone older, someone who's been made to feel like a burden, like you're in a way, like the things you built don't matter anymore, I want you to hear this. You are not invisible. You are not expendable. And the quietest people in the room, they are often the most dangerous. Not because they're angry, because they know exactly what they have, and they know exactly what it's worth.